Okay, I'm back again to answer your technical problems, issues, queries, and anything else bike geek related. Let's crack on then with the first question. First up is Pete Warburton. Can I use modern cabling, inners and outers, on a vintage 10-speed bike build with a 5-speed freewheel, Campagnolo friction shifters, and front and rear mechs? They need some cables and don't want to risk using new old stock or second-hand ones. Right, Pete, firstly, great move. I love a vintage bike restoration. So make sure you send me some photos of that. Now, interestingly, I had to do something similar on a bike I restored. Mine was from the late 80s to early 90s, and the cable runs weren't designed for modern diameter cables, so 5mm outers for the brakes. So I had to basically, I was exactly like you, I didn't want to use some 4mm old ones. So I used some 5mm, then I had to get some special ferrules to actually step them down enough so they would go into the brazons of the top tube for the rear brake. It took a little bit of looking around and hunting, but ultimately it was worth it because, yeah, use some new cables. They are much better than any old ones that could be, starting to fray or crack on the outers. So get yourself some nice new cables. Right, next up is from Hodnet53. They have a road bike with the newer Shimano Claris group set that is just lacking. I don't know what. Anyway, someone near them is selling some Shimano 105 5800 group set, apart from the cranks and bottom bracket. If they buy it, could they use the original cranks or would they have to purchase a new set as well? That's going to be a nice little upgrade on that bike. 105, fantastic group set for the money. Yeah, it's all going to work fine actually. Now the shifting, it may be a little bit clunky to be perfectly honest, because you are going to be using chain rings that are possibly a little bit wider, but it will work, so there you are. One thing though, it's a nice upgrade in the future to make, isn't it? To go to a different chain set, because that is actually an area where you can save a lot of weight. Right, next up, question from David Race, who says his 11-speed 105 left-hand shifter, when moving from the large ring and release back, sometimes leaves a silver arm sticking out, and then he needs to push it back in towards the centre to be able to use the lever to shift back down to the smaller gears. Help. Any ideas? Now, firstly, there could be a bit of dirt in there, so if you've got access to an air hose, blast around behind it and try and release any of it. Failing that, maybe trying some lubricant in there or some silicone spray just to try and free it up. Or this might have happened to you, because it's happened to me in the past. It's because of the way I hold levers. So if I'm not on one of my Di2 bikes, I hold the levers differently, and basically I apply pressure onto the inner shift lever of those STI levers, and I apply enough that sometimes they bend and then they don't release back in well enough. So you might want to carefully, when it's out stuck in that position, just bend it back in towards you a little bit, then it should free it up and return to its initial position. Give it a go, but just go gentle on it though. Next up, a question from Ross, who says basically he's got some of the older STI levers, so not the ones totally hidden cables. The cables come out of the side of the levers and in towards the centre of the bike. Now he wants to change the rubber hoods of them. And the bad news is, Ross, this is quite a big job to do. Well, it's not that bad though, to be honest, but you are going to have to remove the levers from the bike as well as disconnecting the brake cables. Because the reason being, from memory anyway, those new hoods, they're actually removed and put on from the rear of the brake lever hoods. They're held in place with a rubber tab, which is built into the hood, which goes then into the recess of the actual brake hood, so the actual plastic itself. Okay, next up, Kevin wants to know, why don't bike companies use tapered or needle bearings on certain parts of a bike? Hi Kevin, I'm not a bearing expert, but I do take a bit of an interest in it. Interestingly, I used to actually have a needle bearing headset made by Stronglight. I think it was the A9. Again, I can't remember, it was a long time ago, probably 25 years ago or something. I think the reason is that they weren't super reliable because of the way they're positioned. I think they were basically open to more load than a standard ball bearing, or a standard seal bearing anyway. And they, I think, have an increased amount of friction due to the way they're laid. But again, I don't know. But there must be a reason behind it why we don't see them used anymore. Blair Cabot wants to know, have I ever tried using an ultrasonic parts cleaner? He's thinking about getting one and charging his club mates $10 a go to clean their drivetrain. Wow. Well, I'll just call you an entrepreneur, shall I? Yeah, I have used one in the past. One of my friends, he uses one all the time, in fact. Now, personally, I just prefer to use the good old John Canning's elbow grease, just get stuck in. I find it probably a bit quicker because you can do it ever so fast if you really apply some serious pressure. A parts cleaner though, or a ultrasonic cleaner in your case, is a really good option if you're not that pushed for time, so if you just want to rush through it. And I'll tell you what, remember me when you're a millionaire and you've cleaned all of your clubmates' drivetrain. Next up, a question from Numera War. It says, does degreasing significantly improve chain life? It seems like a waste of time. Now, I don't know if you're joking or not. I'm gonna say that you're not because I have covered chain cleaning in the past. Now, yes, it does increase the rate of chain wear. The reason being, when the chain has lubricant on it, it does become sticky and naturally attracts dust, dirt, grime, all of those things. When that forms with the lubricant, basically it forms like a cutting paste. So it starts to wear out your chain rings, your jockey wheels, your cassette. So unless you want to start replacing that on a regular basis, then yeah, start degreasing that chain. Also, it's going to be more efficient as well, because if the chain is full of dirt and gunk and grime, it's not going to be working smoothly. So pay good attention to degreasing, but also when you lube the chain, not to cover it all over in lubricant. Next up, a question from James Gachancha, who says, is spoke tension critical, especially for heavy riders and or very rough roads? Because they seem to be replacing a lot of their rear wheel spokes, even on different road bikes. Now, James, once spokes start rattling or snapping or coming loose, I'd personally just take a step back and look at them and think, why is this happening? Are all the wheels quite old? Is that why it's starting to go? But basically, I think you possibly need to speak to a custom wheel builder and find out advice from them regarding the tension of spokes. A good custom wheel builder is actually worth their weight in gold, because it's likely that they will have decades of experience where they can recommend individual components of a wheel for you and your riding style, the conditions, and actually your weight too. So try and find one of those, ask around local club mates or other cyclists in your area and try and find one. Next up, from BK Montgomery, they've actually sent in an image of some rather crusty looking handlebars. Are the handlebars supposed to look like this? No, they are not. That appears to be salt, which has come through the handlebar tape, presumably from sweat, and it's basically layered on top of the handlebars, and most likely the brake lever clamps and the bolts too are slowly starting to get corroded. So give it a very good clean and then inspect as well to make sure that there is no corrosion starting there and no signs of cracking or anything like that, because that's a serious safety concern. People do joke about it, but never joke about safety. Now, Sam Cates wants to know, I'm thinking of making the switch to tubeless. If I do, will it change my saddlebag? What would I need to take out with me? Now, I'd still take out your CO2 pump or a decent pump and an inner tube. The reason being, sometimes you are going to need an inner tube to sort out a tubeless setup if you encounter a big problem. Also worth taking with you is some tyre patches. So that's a stick on the inside of the tyre in case there's a hole so big you can't actually ride safely without the inner tube poking through. And also some sticky worms. That's right, sticky worms. Have a Google actually to find out what they are. But basically it's like a plug that you can put in and pull out, and it does seal up some small holes. Really, you're just going to take out exactly what you would do normally, but a couple of extra little bits, so those tyre patches and a sticky worm. Next up, from Federico M, they want to know, have we ever tried putting 700C wheels in an old 26-inch mountain bike frame? They've got an old GT Tequesta that they love and they want to try it with 700C wheels. They don't know if it will affect the geometry for worse. They want to use it as a travel bike. Now, I have actually tried this. Funnily enough, I used to work for GT many moons ago, and I've still got some GTs kicking around. And I did try this on a boring school holiday once. I took out the wheels from one of my GT mountain bikes, put in some road bike wheels, and other than it basically handling very poorly, it wouldn't stop either. The reason being, the brakes were set up in such a way that they wouldn't touch the sidewalls of the rims. So unless you've got disc brakes on there, you could probably hack around somehow and get them to work. But if you've got cantilevers, which mine did, it's that long ago, it's not going to work. Next up, Nigel Alton wants to know, As an alternative to tubeless, what do I think about Schwalbe's new airless system, which uses thermoplastic polyurethane instead of a tube? And funnily enough, I mentioned this recently on an episode of the GCN Tech Show. It was episode number 11, so shame on you if you've missed this. Basically, Schwalbe have done away with an inner tube and replaced it with a piece of foam, so it's like a foam liner for the tyre, which is set to a pressure of 3.5 bar or 50 psi and uses the same material as what you find inside of an Adidas Boost midsole of the trainer. So it's got a nice bit of spring in it actually. I've got a pair myself. So I think, yeah, if you're a commuter or you're not particularly fussed about your tyre pressure, certainly a good option. However, if you're into racing and things like that, probably not a good idea to use it. Derek wants to know, is there a big difference in resistance between a cup and cone loose ball bearing versus cartridge bearings? How about durability and comparing the weatherproof abilities? Now, regarding resistance, now you can get some sealed bearings, so sealed cartridge bearings, that have a very low rolling resistance because they use low viscosity grease inside of them, as well as lightweight seals. And others you can really weatherproof by having double seals, in fact, and covering them in grease. Nothing gets in, or not a lot anyway. As for durability wise, well, once cup and cone bearings start to get loose and they rattle a little bit, you can start damaging the races and cones, and in turn almost render the parts useless if left unattended for long enough. Whereas a cartridge bearing you can simply remove and put in a new one at a relatively low cost. Now, performance-wise, well, Shimano and Campagnolo still use cup and cone bearings in their high-end wheel sets. So there must be a reason behind that. Hopefully soon we will try and demystify all of your bearing questions. Now, do remember to leave me your technical problems, questions or queries, or if you've got a friend who's got a squeaky bike or anything like that, make sure they leave theirs down there for me too, or on all forms of social media using the hashtag AskGCNTech. Remember as well to like and share this video with your friends. Share it as well with them if that person has got a squeaky bike. Share this video on their wall on Facebook or something. Also, remember to check out the GCN shop, shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com. You can buy all sorts of things, t-shirts, jumpers, workshop aprons, you name it, we've got it. Now for another great video, click just down here.